Hey, Dirt Farmer Jay here from dirtfarmerjay.com. What if I could show you a method that you could use one saw setup to cut all the joints you need, including the bottom for a drawer set? Stick around and I'll show you how. Hi, Dirt Farmer Jay here from dirtfarmerjay.com. You know, there's a lot of time-tested methods for creating drawers, including dovetails and pocket screws and butt joints and all sorts of things. But I think a great combination is something that has good mechanical strength and is easy to cut, is accurate, and builds a really strong drawer. And that method that I've really landed on is commonly called the quarter method. And that's because in half-inch stock, which is commonly used for most drawer construction, quarter-inch is 1/2 the thickness of this, and every joint that is in this is based on quarter-inch increments. So let's take this little box apart, and the joints on this method are pretty straightforward. There they are right there. Each of these cuts were made with the same setup, just depending on which way you oriented the piece of wood to the fence and to the tabletop. Okay, let's head on over to the table saw and I'll show you how we do it. To set up the saw correctly for this quarter method, there's 3 dimensions that need to be 1/4 inch. So here they are. First of all, you need to have the width of the blade, and this happens to be a box cutting blade that is precisely 1/4 inch. But if you're using a dado stack, you need to be really precise. So use a set of calipers and get it to exactly 1/4 inch or half the width of the stock that you're using. So if you're using approximately 1/2 inch stock, then you need the width of the dado stack to be exactly half the thickness of that. Because we're using precise Baltic birch plywood that is landing exactly 1/2 inch, this blade is set at precisely 1/4 inch. There's one of the quarters. The next quarter is the height of the blade from the insert or the plane of the table. This needs to be exactly 1/4 inch so that the tongue of the ends of the boxes will go in and seat at the right depth. So 1/4 tall. There's the second quarter. The remaining quarter is the distance between the inside edge of the blade and the fence. And again, you may need to do some trial and error with some setup stock to get exactly 1/4 inch depth here, 1/4 inch width, 1/4 inch height. All right, now let me flip the script just a little bit. We've been referring to this technique as quarter. And the reason we have been is because we have been using a 1/4 inch blade, 1/4 inch distance, 1/4 inch height, because we're using 1/2 inch stock. So 1/4 is 1/2 of 1/2 inch stock. A better or more accurate name for this is really the half method. Not because of 1/2 inch, but half thickness of whatever stock you're using. So for instance, let's suppose I was building some kind of heavy duty shallow drawer and I wanted to use 3/4 inch stock or maybe even 1 inch stock. I would simply adjust all of those dimensions, not to 1/4, but half the thickness of whatever stock I'm using. So let's apply it in the case of a 3/4. Half of 3/4 is 3/8. So what I would do then is use a 3/8 inch dado stack, a 3/8 inch raise above the table to the top edge of the height of the blade, and a 3/8 distance between the blade and the fence. And everything is scalable then. If you're using a 1 inch, it'd be half. So 5/8, 5/16, 5/16, 5/16. That's why it's more accurately called half. But for those of us cutting a lot of 1/2 inch stock, quarter will do. You may have noticed something, and that is you got to be really persnickety to get these dimensions correct. So if you're like me, once you set them, you'd like to leave them. And in this case, I was able to use a dedicated table saw. My friend Steve Callahan gave me this table saw off of his cabinet installation company. One of the crews brought it back in and the motor was burned out. So we're able to replace that. And now It is a dedicated drawer making setup. And I've got a lot of drawers to make in here. So if you can set something up like this dedicated, it's a good thing. Now there's a little caveat I want to tell you about. You can see that we have a shop-made insert with threaded inserts on the end here that allow us to raise this. One thing we found out is you need to be ultra precise in getting this right and making sure you don't have a warped insert. If it's dipping down at all, and the blade, now when you're running joints from different axes, it multiplies any error there is. So make sure that you have an insert that's absolutely flat. And once you get this set up perfectly, it's beautiful. Everything will go together. Well, let's run some stock. All right, let's go ahead and cut our parts here. We now have set our saw up accurately with that quarter dimension that we outlined here. And now we have our drawer parts. Now, when you've got a lot of parts, it's pretty easy to get confused what they are. They all look similar, and you don't want to do all this work and then cut the wrong joints on it. So I simply denote, I put an S on these two that they're sides, so they'll be cut differently than the front and the back. The front and the back will end up with a tongue that gets used to pull in and out versus being pulled off the end. There'll be a mechanical connection. So we'll make sure that we make those correctly. Now, we're gonna go ahead and just because of the size of these, just use the fence and the end of the squareness to run them. You can use a push pad if you like as well for these smaller parts, which I recommend. And of course, we've got safety glasses on. Let's go ahead and do it. The fronts are going to get a tongue, so we're going to put it up upright and run it like this. And I run them twice, simply to clean up the joint. Notice we flip it in for in while retaining the same face reference. Don't spin them when you turn. We're just going to tumble like this. And here we go again. Now let's go ahead and put the joint or the groove that goes for the drawer bottom. It's really easy to make a mistake here, so pay attention on this. You do not want to run this with the tab or the tongue up. If I run it like this, it'll be on the wrong side. So what we need to do is flip it, make sure that the cut comes up. You can see it right there. Here we go. You know it's correct when you can see there is no space left right there. The tab's intact, but the groove's on the tab side. All right, the drawer front and back are done. Now let's do the side. Here we go. Now you're going to put this against the fence, not up like this, but flat, and we'll go ahead and run it through. Spin it in for in. Repeat. Now you need the groove on the bottom for the drawer. Just choose an edge, the best edge, flat, on the same side as the other grooves are. Make sure if you do have any splinters, that sort of thing, they're cleaned off, because you need to be very accurate to get the box to go together correctly. Okay, our parts are made. Let's go ahead and see how they fit together. Okay, we have all of our pieces now that we've cut, and let's just get them put together here, including the bottom. And what you're going to do to assemble this is line up the inside grooves, so the drawer bottom with the tongue. And you're going to need to do both the front and back first to be able to slide in the bottom. So we're going to do front, back, then you can stand it up on its end, slide in the bottom, get that seated. And what's really nice about this setup is that it's essentially self-squaring. So once you put it together, it pretty much self-squares the way it goes here. Now, when you're assembling this, what I like to do is run a bead of glue in each of the grooves and a little one on the shoulder. Put the joint together like that. And if you want, you can use a pin nailer and shoot right through the top here, or just put it in a pair of parallel clamps. Clamp it for about 15-20 minutes and the drawer is ready to go. If you've used pre-finished stock, all you need to do then is touch up the edges and you're golden. All right, something you may be curious about is how to size the drawer. Well, drawer height, you're going to determine based on the stack of drawers and whatever the cavity is where you're going to put it in, or just the desired size of the box you're building. The height is pretty easy. The depth has to do with the depth of the cavity, or again, how far or the proportion you want to make a box or a gift box or just a little drawer that you're making. Where it gets critical is the width of the cavity and whether or not you're using these type of drawer guides or not. These drawer guides, standard industry, are 12 millimeters or a ½ inch thick. So whatever the cavity is or where you're going to mount the drawer guides, you would make the overall box, the drawer, 1 inch narrower, ½ inch on each side, and therefore the guides will work perfectly and support it without any wobble or deflection. So that sizes the width. Now, once you know all that, now cutting the parts becomes a little bit of a math challenge, but not really, especially in the quarter when using ½ inch stock. So if you look at the joint right here, front to back, these are the sides. So front to back, the length of the sides is just exactly the depth of the whole box. It's front to back here, not a problem. On the front and back pieces though, because they don't go all the way down the outside edge, they're held back a ½ inch on each side. You're going to take the desired length of, or the width of the front of the box and subtract a quarter and a quarter or 1/2 inch. And that's going to be the overall length of your front and back pieces. Now, once you cut the groove in around there, how do you know what size the bottom is going to be? Well, again, pretty simple. If you look at the front and back, the drawer bottom is just going to be the same length as the overall from end of tongue to end of tongue, because it's sitting in the same depth groove that the bottom is. And to measure the width of the drawer bottom, you're simply going to go to the outside edge right here of the tongue to the outside edge. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and measure them. And this happens to be the drawer bottom on this one needs to be about 9 5/8 or 9 9/16 inches. And on the width, we're just going to go from shoulder to shoulder, and it's about 4 3/8 inches. So you could simply cut the drawer bottom and then it'll fit all together when you put it there. That's how you figure the measurements. And now you know the secret to the quarter method. You are a drawer making pro. Hey, you know something else that really confuses people? What's the difference between a groove, a dado, and a rabbet? Check out this video that we produced that explains those three different things. They'll be clear in your mind from now on. And while you're at it, also check out this other video we produced that's out of our catalog that YouTube thinks is perfect for your interests, and we'd like it if you watch it too. Hey, until the next time, this is Dirt Farmer Jay from Dirt Farmer Jay. Trying not to drop my drawers.